right up. I wanted to be right opposite the laptop because it will not look good. Okay. Yeah, I think that is okay. Waiting for the countdown.
So Kamal,
Pranab, you can start the session.
Bindu here.
Hey, hi, Dr. Bindu. How are you doing?
How are you doing, sir?
Good, thank you.
A very interesting array of books behind you. Huh?
Yeah, what I couldn't read, I put them up there.
Good strategy. Positioning. I guess you should teach my students that also. Anyway, so it's a pleasure to have you today. Eagerly looking forward to the session. I have a lot of people who have sent me messages saying they're looking forward to your session. So just wanted to post you all the very best, sir.
Okay,
We'll catch up during the session. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Pranav, you can start the session.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Ramaiah College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Department of Management Studies welcomes you all to the webinar series on management challenges and opportunities in the face of pandemic. So, topic for today is career life cycle. That is an exploration of starting and building career in current times. So we have with us Mr. Kamal Karan, CEO of CEO of Xfino, to address us on the topic. We welcome you, sir. Also, I would like to welcome our beloved Dean, Dr. Bindu Nambiar, faculties of Ramaiah College of Arts, Science and Commerce, faculties of other esteemed institutes, students, and all the other participants. We welcome you all. Also, I would like to take this opportunity to thank each and everyone for taking up your precious time and attending this webinar. Now I request Professor Sindhuja, moderator for the day, to introduce the speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Pranav. It is my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for the day, Mr. Kamal Karan, co-founder of Xfino, a specialist staffing company. Previously, Mr. Kamal was the managing director of Kelly Services India and Malaysia, where he turned around Kelly India's operations and steered the company into profitability. Prior to this, he was APEC head of Marfoy Randstad, based out at Kuala Lumpur, where he was instrumental in launching their China, Hong Kong, Thailand, and Singapore operations. Over his 2 decades in the world of work, he has consulted on executive search, RPOs, and staffing solutions to large enterprises like Citibank, Google, BNP Paribas, Benetton, Adore, Hero Motors, and Mercedes. Mr. Kamal has also co-founded the Indian Staffing Federation, a prominent voice for labor reforms in India. Besides his successful professional front, Sir is also a prolific writer, wherein he's a columnist for the Hindu Business Line and Times of India, apart from being a keen observer and commentator on workplace dynamics across social media. Being a fitness enthusiast and a movie buff, Mr. Kamal believes that relationships define careers and believes that all of us should do much better on the relationship front, which will ultimately lead us to a good career path. We welcome you, sir, and we are highly honored to have you here today as our guest. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, and thank you for the Department of Management Studies and Ramaiah College for having me today. I have created, kind of a presentation which allows the flow of conversation that we can have. Otherwise, it'll be very difficult to look at me and observe what I'm going to say. So let me start by taking you through what I call as the career life cycle. I hope all of you are able to see the presentation. Are you able to see the first slide? So just a confirmation would help me.
Yes, sir, we can see the first slide.
And I started to say this in all the talks that I've been part of since COVID. Many things that we are entering in recent times, we have to believe this, that all things are difficult before they are easy. That means we need to get to that step. And I'm sure many of you who are studying various aspects, your own journey in life, the more you reflect on it, you'll realize that everything has been difficult and eventually they became easy, right? So I wanted to keep this in mind because whether it's your studies or maybe 1 or 2 years from now, as we go through this path and a very difficult path ahead, this might make it at least feel better to start with. The 3 parts that I want to cover today with you is, the career life cycle, as I call it, and however I have tried to decipher it. Most importantly, because many of you are still getting out of the market out there to, for your first job. So I also want to give a context to what is it looking like from where I am. It's not the complete truth, but it's the experience and the world that I am seeing. if at all I could dare to tell you that this is the hack, because the hack that I say may not work for you. Everyone has to come up with their own, but still I'm going to try that at the end of the session today. So these are 3 parts that I'm going to cover today. And we also have some time allocated for questions. So that would happen possibly towards the end of the session. So I also mixed it with certain amount of polls so that I want to hear what you're thinking, which will allow me to also customize and talk to you about what I'm thinking about what you're saying. So let's dive into the first poll. Professor Ajay, if you can put it down there. I want to ask all of you, especially people who are still studying and getting out of your MBAs or BBAs, have you taken an education loan which you need to pay back as soon as you get your job? Okay, that should be enough. Then we have the answers. Or did I give you enough time to vote?
So the question, have you taken an education loan which you need to pay back as soon as you get your job? So the percentage of people who have replied yes is 27%, no is 71%, and not answered is 3%.
Okay, thank you for that, Professor. So we have a significant number of people who have not taken a loan, which for me, I believe is a positive factor, for the reason that many times when you choose a career, the loans, the immediate financial outcome of where we will land actually decides which path we will take. So thank you for answering that. So if I have to move on, the first part about career life cycle is there was always a predictable path that you all saw, whether it was your siblings or maybe your parents, how the career started, early career between 25 to 35, how the career developed to be a manager in the 35 to 50 year kind of a range, some of them in the today's world, vice presidents, even CEOs. And by 50, mostly people became CEOs in the manufacturing era. That changed in the IT era where post 35 people started to become, the CXOs and CEOs, and retirement. We all know this, cycle. I'm not going to spend time on that. But as you can see, over the last decade or so, from the world of startups that has emerged and all that we have seen around us, many things have changed. So the bulk of our, or rather the peak of our career is possibly, is between 25 to 35, and many of the people that you meet today are talking about early 40s into early 50s where the peak accumulation is happening. So if you just plot what used to happen was what's happening now, almost at 50 people are talking about retirement, or in some of the sectors, they'll pushed into, retirement because they're not viable anymore, or they're not skilled anymore, they're not stayed relevant anymore. So the current context in many of you are getting into the job market, the 20 to 28 is your early career, many things get established there. And remember that 28 to 38 is where most of the development would happen. Yeah, with pluses and minuses. In some of the startups, this acceleration is faster. So mostly the peak is hit even before you hit 40. And whatever that peak is, we'll talk about it. So I'm not talking into what is peak like. It is different for each one of us. For many of us, it's about titles. For some of us, it's fulfillment. I'm not getting there now. Just to give you a context into how career life cycle is seen today. I want you to pay attention to the career life cycle in the context of what I call as a hype cycle. Many of you would have also read about Gartner's hype cycle. So this is kind of a framework to allow you to think through how, whether it's your studies or even your career starts. Let's say you get a new job. What happens? You're excited about it. I'm hoping all of us are excited about our first jobs that we get because it is the first one after all, right? So then let's say it's the most exciting job you got into. It's a new program in a new job, great possibilities. You've heard of this company or not heard of this company. So there's a lot of curiosity and the career takes off in that way. So many of us are, I'm sure would like to hear to ourselves saying that, my job rocks, right? So over a period of time, what we see is that, as soon as you start doing the job is difficult, the boss is difficult. If you are in a sales job, the customers are difficult, you know. So the peers are sometimes, problematic. So you have all these challenges, and as you go over the initial romantic phase with your job, the adrenaline wears off, things start going south. And that's the time many of us would like to change a job. You won't uh, think of it at this point of time, but most of us, at least in the last 5 years, the maximum amount of attrition is in the first 1 year. People take their first job and leave. Within 1.5 years, more than 50% of people change jobs. It's purely because, all the initial euphoria has gone off because of what I said, mismatch with the job, not understanding the atmosphere well, higher expectations about the organization, and maybe a not so supporting boss and colleagues. All these things contribute, So we go down, and then again, we're talking about learning new skills. We learn that by, certain experience, change a job, then we learn, or maybe within the same organization that we work for, we learn new skills and again try to, recreate that for ourselves. Change of manager or a change of role, some of these things also contribute to it, or just the maturity of the age, that now what does it take to actually make this job work. So with all this, possibly it starts going up again, and you sort of create a niche for yourself, you define your interests, and it goes. So think of it from a career progression point of view, that if this is a hype cycle, what would help you is to imagine your career life cycle as a chain of hype cycles. It goes up, comes down, you renew yourself or reskill yourself, goes up again. Sometimes it happens by changing a job, going to another organization helps. Sometimes it's about a new role, or like I said, it takes time to understand the job, and maybe the next year you'll do better. So that's when the graph goes up, or you're working in a company where there are good recognition systems. So because of which you feel motivated, it goes up. So where you stand in this life cycle or hype cycles will actually help you. So I wanted to pay attention to, this University of Baltimore's nice pictorial prescription of career life cycle. They call it career cycle. If you start with, let's say a world of research, you start with exploring the world of work. You research the marketplace. You're starting with the right yellow box and starting from there. You gain a internship somewhere, which is very important. Many of us don't get internship, or we're so busy with finishing up our studies that we don't take up internship. I think that's a very crucial phase to enter your career. Then you get to know how to possibly write your resume, build your online presence, which is very important nowadays. We all know that, and start building the network. I'll come to the network in a while, but just assimilate some of these pieces. And then, of course, your colleges that you study and teach you all these things today. There are mock interviews that you're going through, I'm sure, and building that network of people whom you have created as soon as you entered college life. And, all the while it is about experiences. Every piece is an experience, as you can see there, right? And then you get a job, you assess yourself, how you're doing, celebrate your accomplishments, and choose your path. All these things is not happening in 1 day, 1 year, 2 years. I'm talking about a 5-year cycle here when I talk about this. So just Google it, the university has written a little more on this. So as you discover this in each phase, you can create a brand for yourself. So whether it is going to that internship, going to your first job, or going to the next job, you sort of start creating the brand about who you are. So when I say a brand, I'm talking about who you are, your own identity in your eyes, your own identity in how the employers will see you. So that is pretty much about how you create a path in a career cycle, about creating experiences for you. In the current fresher jobs and opportunities, I wanted to sort of start by asking you, if let's say you had a choice, what would be your preference for your first job? A large MNC, Indian enterprise, a startup, there are 10,000 startups. No preference if it's the money, is good, like I've been there, so I can relate to that, and I'm not ashamed to say that. None of the above. So what's your preference? MNC, large Indian enterprise, startup, I don't care. Maybe for some of you, none of this is relevant, so that's fine. One, two, three, four, five, six. Okay, can we have the answers?
Sure, sir. Here are the answers. Your preference for your first job would be 41% of the participants are saying it would be an MNC. 20% of them are saying it should be large Indian enterprises. About 39% of them are saying that they would be very good with a startup. And 13% of them are saying that they do not have any preference as such, as long as the money is there, money is right. And 3% of them have mentioned like it's none of these.
Okay. 13%. 39% is startup. Fair enough. That's just from understanding, no judgment. Okay, so move along to the scene of what's happening around us. If you look at the employment news, the good and the bad is, if you, I'm sure, open these newspapers, this is what you see. Is as recent as you can see it. In June, that IOCL says we're starting apprentice, so there are adding people. 100 graduates were added by urban company rather. Cognizant, though postpones joining dates. COVID is impacting hospitality sector, so delay of onboarding. So there is the good and the bad. So I'm sure, depending on which newspaper you read and what you make out of each news, it sort of has a mixed bag out there, especially during COVID times, right? So if you look at the opportunities landscape today, I hope you've heard of some of these spaces to look at. Clearly, Internshala, Fresher World, Glassdoor, Indeed, these are some of the places to go to for fresher jobs. You look at the active internships in thousands, and the new internships is WFH jobs internships, about close to 7,000 of them. That's quite a bit, right? So if you look at location wise, you can see that there are so many internships out there. If I'm you, I'll go and grab them. So you look at fresherworld.com kind of jobs they put out there. So of course, a lot of them are IT, some of them may not be looking at that if you're doing a BBA or MBA right now. So look at the kind of fresher jobs out there. So this is just to give you a feel of where the world of jobs is, and the kind of companies who are recruiting. I'm sure when if you said MNCs, some of you said large Indian enterprises, look at it. You have Atos, Accenture, WNS, kind of MNCs, and you have the large Indian enterprise like Wipro, Sutherland, HCL, Emphasis out there as well. So, if you want opportunities, there you go, so that's available to you. I just thought, I should ask you this as I went through that. How many of you heard of these job portals before? LinkedIn, Naukri, Glassdoor, none of these, something else you must have heard of. Have you heard of this? I know I put it out there, but have you heard of this before? Sorry, it's a wrong question. Yes or no? Ajay?
I'm sorry, sir. Sir, could you please repeat the question, sir? We did not get it.
I put it out there. Can you see it? Which are the job portals you're familiar with or heard?
Yes, sir. Yes, yes. This is the third question. So these are the results of the poll. Which are the job portals you are familiar with or heard of? So we see that around 81% of them are familiar with LinkedIn. They have used and are also familiar with LinkedIn. 76% of them are with Naukri.com, 43% of them with Indeed.com, 23% of them with Glassdoor, and 17% of them are with other job portals.
Cool. Thank you for that. So also let's talk about the MBA opportunities landscape, because most of you studying here are pursuing MBA, if not already, sort of completed that. So if you look at what Naukri lists, in terms of freshers, I showed that before, 6,500 for MBAs alone, right? LinkedIn is talking about at least 350 internship, for MBAs, entry level about another 3,500 kind of jobs, 600 for freshers. So yeah, I mean, like if you look at it, we are talking about clearly 10,000 opportunities for MBAs right now as we speak. This is what we picked up in the last 2 days, right? So it's the current opportunities. So yeah, there is COVID and there are challenges around us, but we are talking about more than 18,000 companies which have a paid up capital about 10 crores. So which means that there's a huge landscape we're talking about in terms of large corporates who want to recruit people like you. So this is the opportunity. At any given time, we're talking about 10,000. So this is what we picked up, but of course there are many other sites, and this is not a kind of a Bible of all the sites we have aggregated. We just took the top 4 that we discussed now. But at the same time, you have to remember that the competition is intense. You look at it, how many people are coming to the job market. You're competing with everybody who's coming out there, right? We're talking about 18 to 20 million people who come into the job market. And as you can imagine, as a country, we are progressing, from a developing country that we are rapidly progressing with a higher GDP growth. Our enrollment also to higher education is increasing. And of course, the report of unemployment, numbers have changed right now. But of course, it's a country also where a large number of us work in the informal sector, right? At the same time, you also have, if you look at the red circles, we're talking about people who have technical degrees and are unemployed. For different reasons, we'll get to that. But you look at the number of people who also are graduates and not employed, 36%. So overall, if you look at the current context, it's a grim situation. We could still say 3-4 crore people are out of the job at this point of time who might otherwise have a job if not for COVID. So the landscape right now is pretty tight. It would be the same in the next 2 years. I don't see that changing. If some of you are in your second year or second semester or yet to get to that path of finding a job, I think the context will not change much. So what does it mean? That means we are talking about 10 to 15,000 opportunities for MBAs at this point of time, but also there's so many people coming out there. So which means the competition is intense. So it's not going to be easy. So what would you do? If I had to ask you a question, when you get to that workspace, you said you want to be in an MNC, most of you, what kind of salary do you think is good? Because 70% of you also said that you didn't have a education loan. So what is the salary you would expect? Can I ask for the poll, Ajay? What is the salary that you would expect? 20K, 30K, 40K? I don't know if you want to know 1 lakh. I've not put that, but yeah, I could have given more choices there, but I thought this is what is the current market rate running. So here we go.
So the results of the poll are as follows. The expected salary from the first job. 18% of the participants are expecting 20,000 per month. 37% of them expect 30,000 per month. 32% of them 40,000 per month. 22% of them say that money is not a criteria. And 5% of them respond as none of these.
Okay. So what we are saying is almost 60% of us believe that, between 30 and 40K is where, we think is a good first job salary, right? So with that, let's jump into the MBA employment landscape. if 3 lakh people are getting added as MBAs every year, employment, as you can imagine, is about 35%. The colleges that you've gone to would tell you how much placement percentage they've had, right? So if you are in a premier institute, it's sort of taken care of. That's the reason all of us, want to be in the IIMs, ISBs and TAPMEs, if I want to take some names where placements so far have been more or less guaranteed. I don't know what's the scene going to be this year, but I think if there is a preference for most companies, we obviously start with the big ones, right? So if you are not in the big league, then what happens? So that's the reason you see that 35% of MBAs are only employed every year. So you can see that which domains are more employable talent. So as you can see from 2014 to now, one piece that is clearly improving is somebody who's been an engineer. Because, India has, sort of progressed into be a more tech intensive industry, for services industry growing, more MNCs coming to India to open their own GICs. There are 1,350, captive centers, which mean large MNCs outside of India have set up their tech centers in India. So that's why you see, they're employing a whole lot of people, which means that engineers are getting more jobs. That's why, we're saying that more percentage of them are employable. So as you can see, the MBA curve has sort of gone down in this time, Don't lose heart if you're doing an MBA. It's just like, you may not be part of that percentage, Overall, if you look at each category, clearly, we've been seen as a services country and, we've sort of created more engineers. And let's face it, that in the services landscape, they have got more jobs, right? So from a qualification point of view, companies hire in different ways. Many of them hire engineers. That's depending on which industry you are from. Primarily, if you're an MBA, you possibly would get a job in every kind of an industry. If you're in sales, you're in finance, HR, you're likely to get it. I don't think you'll not be there in an industry purely because you have an MBA qualification, right? So overall, most of the organizations have a very high mix of, hiring people in the 1 to 5 year space, because that's where they want to hire people who have little experience. There's also a churn. So, that's where you see that the last
Dear participants, there is a small network connectivity issues here. We request you all to please wait for a few minutes. The network will be restored in a while from now. Thank you.
Professor, I'm back. I'm sorry.
Hello, sir. Sir, can you hear us, sir?
I can.
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Is this where I lost you? Sinja, you can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
I hope this is where I lost all of you.
Yes, sir.
So, like I think, if only 30% of MBAs are being employed, that means that we have a problem for unemployability than unemployment, right? If 50 lakh students graduate every year and 50% of people actually lack employability skills, it means that along with education, we are not learning the skills the employers want us to have. So this is our biggest problem today. So I want to start with that. So if that being the case, how are we choosing our jobs? I want to ask you this, where do you want your first job to be? Because there is a case that we are all, experiencing now, that so many of us are not getting jobs. I'm showing you that about 12,000 jobs for MBAs, and at the same time, we are saying that only 35% of MBAs are getting employed. So tell me, where do you want your first job to be? Because I have a hypothesis around this. So your first job has to be in your hometown. Yes, no, how do you choose your job? So some of the questions I've been asking you around your salary, company preference, do you have a loan, right? All in order, because I want to understand a little more as I'm speaking. Yeah, 50% of you are saying that you want to be in your hometown. Why? The question is why? See, I think when you're looking at the context that you're in a competitive atmosphere, you're not from a premium institute, let's say. Even in premium institute, you don't get a choice to be in your hometown. And I don't know what is that craving for that. Why I ask that question is, when you are choosing your job, there are about 4 frictions, as I call it. The first one is, do you have the right skills? You may have a qualification, but the companies are going to look at you and say, okay, this person has these kind of skills and it's a skill match. That's the first friction that may come between you and the employer, saying this person doesn't have the right skills. The second is salary. That's the reason I asked you the salary part. As to what is the salary you want. You may want an X salary. The company may be willing to pay X minus. So it may not be the right match. The third one is location. The job may be in Mumbai, but you want to be in Delhi. So you don't get to get that job, right? And the fourth is timing. When you are passing out of your MBA or a BBA, that's when you want the job, but the organization may not have the vacancy at that point of time. So these 4 frictions of the skill mismatch, the salary mismatch, the location mismatch, which we just saw that 50% of you want to be in your hometown, and the timing. When you want, is the job really there, right? So this is why I think it's important for us to get out of this mindset that I have to be in my hometown. Go experience the world, and when you are a brand, like I asked before, if you create your own skills and become a bit of a brand, hometown will come calling eventually. Now, what's your hack? This is what I asked for, right? So what will you do to get your job? What are the chances in front of you today? Yeah, you're also doing your MBA, BBA. Can you also add up a little more? I'll ask you a question. When your employer is in front of you, why does he or she want to hire you? They want to hire you to consider you for a job which they think you are potentially good for. And how will they determine that? They look at you and saying, what has the person done before? The past is not always a reflection of the future. Most of us make our decisions based on the past. That's what your interviewers will do. So they look at what you have done, and most importantly, they want somebody whom they can train. So then they will see what I have learned, how much I multitask. Because in the world of COVID that we are in, we are looking at how can we maximize our employees. Can this person do A, B, C, D, or this person can only do sales? This person can only do operations. Can this person also do finance? This person can do sales and operations both. So that is a multitasking required. So your multitasking starts while you're studying. If you're able to do that, then you're a good candidate for the best job. Look for all the active job openings. It's a no-brainer, and apply for it. You applied one today, don't feel great about it because you are the best fit for the job. Like I showed you, there's so many thousands, millions are out there who are applying for the job, right? Network with professionals. Yeah, like talking to strangers on LinkedIn saying I want a job may not fetch you much, but be at it. Go through your own personal network. Somebody, through them, get connected. Don't make too many cold connections and it doesn't fetch anything. Volunteer to be there. Are a lot of NGOs out there who would benefit from the energy that you have to serve. And there's a lot of things you will learn by being connected at a grassroots level. Take that up. If anybody asks you to do a free job, go and take it. Do some small stints when you have breaks, and you learn something from that. yeah, you have another choice, like I've done many times in my life, when I had time, I went and watched movies. Okay, now we have a new distraction called Prime and Netflix. What would you do? So I'm not telling you anything. I'm sure the answer is pretty much clear to you. But also at the same time, I would ask you to watch some movies. Your uh, uh, journey to be in the world of work, some of these movies actually give you an insight into how the world of work is. Not exhaustive list. Of course, these are movies I like, and I think they'll give you an insight into work. Peaceful Warrior is a great movie. It's only I think on YouTube about how we win our mind. The fear of failure. I think that's something you should watch. Intern, I'm sure many of you must have watched a recent movie. Jerry Maguire is one. Up in the Air gives you a inside view into organizations. And one of the important aspects of the job, which I think I have not really highlighted, is in today's world, when you get your first job, it's also quite likely that it is not a job that you might like or your employer may like you. It's unlike the world we come from. I know when I say this, I'll sound a little preachy, but I'll still dare to do that. At our home, we are allowed, whatever we are, however we behave. Our parents, our siblings take care of us. The first thing they ask is, "Khana khaya beta? Did you sleep well?" This is how our home is. But when you get to work, you are not entitled for all these things. Yeah, people will take care of you. They know you're human beings. The world of work has changed quite a lot over the last decade, but still, you are expected to turn up and do things the way the organization expects you to do. Your delivery matters, So who you were, where you came from, does not matter after you step in. So Up in There is a movie which actually tells you that if you don't, make it, how the organizations even fire you. So one of the things I want to leave you with, all of us are set up for success. Nobody tells us in colleges when we are studying, if we fail, what happens, right? So I'm sure all of you have seen the movie Chichore, right? So if you have seen that, I'm very sure you'll also know that, failure is going to be part of our life. For the reason I'm stretching on this aspect, besides the fun part of the movies, is that I think in our career cycle, we also need to be prepared to be fired. Doesn't sound very motivating. I know you're all studying and you're all very aspirational and very inspired to join the world of work. But various events across our, us, and COVID is one such thing where we'll all feel helpless. Where we know so many of us in a personal cycle who are possibly losing jobs for not any fault of theirs. This happened before 9/11 happened. Global financial crisis in 2008-9 happened. Many of them lost their jobs. COVID is the worst of it, where many of them are losing jobs for no reason. So I want you to remember that there could be phases in your life where you might lose your job for no fault of yours. Up in the Air is one movie which shows part of those glimpses and talks about relationships. Okay, so another movie that comes to my mind as I'm speaking to you is a movie called Intern. Not this Intern, this about interning in Google. It's a fun movie. You should watch it. It gives you an insight into how the world of work is. With all the pluses and minuses. Do that. Some stuff I wanted to talk about is, when I asked you, where do you want to work? How much money you want? Many of you put 30,000, 40,000 based on, I don't know what was the basis, but I'm sure for at least that 29% of people who have taken loans for your education, it is right now to ensure that I get my physiological safety. That means, am I safe here? Will I get my food? Will I get a place to stay? And that will be roti kapra makan, like they say. And that is the first thing that I will look for in my first job. That's what 30% of you need to take care of to ensure that your education loan is sort of something paid for soon. Then we look for what we call a psychological safety. Is this a place that makes me feel safe in terms of money, in terms of overall safe in terms of the roof on my head, things like that, right? As those needs are sort of met. I'm sure you read this all, Maslow's needs of hierarchy, as they call it. So then you start looking for in your organization, do I belong here? Or am I connected here, right? And that sort of brings more productivity, more juices in you, and the employer also feels that this person, works for the company, is not selfish, things like that. And your self-esteem, self-actualization comes much later. It doesn't happen very early in the career, but I guess the first three sort of are the things that we look for in our career, in our progression. The hack that I was talking about is not something which is not known. Would you actually do an internship? What's that you do in terms of professional networking? I want to spend some time on this and talk to you about how to network. You know, networking is sort of frowned upon or used very loosely many a times. If you're already studying and you have, let's say, 2 semesters to go, 1 year to go, you're in first year, whatever that is, the time that you have with yourself, can you make a new connection every week? When I say connection, it's not a LinkedIn connection or a Facebook connection, but it is with a real person who's working somewhere, and you spend some time to understand what they're doing, and they also remember who you are. And I'm sure when you look at your personal circle, there'll be so many. Your siblings, friends, your father's friends, your relatives, cousins, so many people. It's just that we all know them by how they're related to us or how they're friends to your ecosystem. Just go beyond that and look for where are they employed. Spend some time, seek their attention to also understand who they are, what they do, and also give a bit of a glimpse of you. For me, that is the best form of networking. If you can do one a week, that'll be great. And I think many of the aspects related to what you're already doing in your college will anyhow help you, in terms of identifying your skill sets, preparing for mock interviews and repeating that. I know tech savviness, it's a world of data literacy and tech savviness. You need to be at it whether you like it or not, and being out there and doing things. For me, internships or volunteering are doing things. So one thing I want to tell you is the first 5 years, if you make a series of mistakes, don't judge yourself. Think about the fact that the first 5 years is about your experimentation with your life. Maybe the first 5 years is about choosing your industry. Which industry do you think you best belong to? Because as you are studying now, you could have made up your mind and you said, okay, I've taken MBA finance because this is what I want to do. I want to be in IT industry. I want to be a CFO eventually, whatever that is. You told yourself a few things. I want to be a CHRO, in an IT company or maybe in a pharma company. These are things you've made those choices based on whatever you heard, somebody you've seen, and you have your own role models. And you pretty much made up your mind on those aspects. That's why you take an MBA, finance, HR, or marketing, because you already decide a kind of a role for yourself. The industry part, you may have some idea, but you might be still fluid on it. Some of you may even thought of companies, but I think don't do that. It's too early in your life to do that. So the starting point would be to get to an industry and see whether you belong there. There's things that you can do very well for yourself, right? And then the role per se. For me personally, the first job I got was a sales job, so I didn't know whether I was good at it. The first job I got was in a pharma company, so I did what I did. I realized I was good in sales. How did I know that? Because I was moving up. That's one way of looking at it. 2, I think I was enjoying it. And 3, most importantly, people around me told me that I'm a good sales guy. So when others tell you, you sort of believe it more often. So I said, okay, I'm a sales guy. But I was not sure about the industry for 6-7 years. I worked in pharmaceutical industry, then I worked in the biotech industry. Then staffing industry happened to me. And when that happened, I felt, okay, this is my calling. And then last 20 years, I've stayed in this industry. So I changed companies. I worked for 2 employers before I started on my own. So when I became an entrepreneur, I did that in the same industry. And even today, my job is to sell. So I've kept my hat of sales throughout the last 25 years. I've changed industries. And now last 20 years, I'm in the same industry because, like I said, you'll find your calling and your experimentation is about 5 to 7 years. Mine, I think, with about first 7 years was experimentation. I didn't have all these permutations formula now. I look wise when I tell you this now. So it happened and I made this formula for you, right? You can change companies. You can also change roles, but the first 2, I think in an order you need to sort of experiment with it. The first 5 years will go into that. So professional networking, I talked about it, so it's an art that you need to develop by indulging in science. The science is Can I talk to people whom I know, first, and people whom I don't know but want to get connected to through the people whom I know. So there's always, like we talk about the 6 dot theory. That means if you need to know somebody, there will be at least another 4 dots in between, the other people who will take you there. You just need to look for them. Somebody whom you know knows that person, how to get there. So for me, that is networking and nothing else. It is just being alive to the people whom we know and what are they doing and how they are doing. Sometimes we're just not open to that. So all of you are getting into a new world. The workplace, as you learned, has changed inside out, hasn't it? Last 2 months, I'm sure you're seeing your parents, your siblings, all the people, your friends who are working from home now, right? And if you're getting into a job now, you're no longer going to go and meet people, isn't it? So if you're not meeting people and you're going to get interviewed on just video, I know it's a world of TikTok and many of us have got comfortable, being in front of screens and recording things. But getting onto an interview for a job that you want 40K salary is a different ballgame. And then if you get selected, they would say, now you're onboarding you remotely. You never heard of that. You never prepared for that. You might be telling yourself you took the job of HR MBA because you're a people person. Some of you may be saying, oh, I'm a visual person. I want to see things, right? So you need to get comfortable with, I call a text-based communication. That's when you can do, working remotely much better. So it's a new world that you're entering. So you need to practice many things like, like I said, text-based, communication, writing down, making notes, documentation, self-learning. Of course, in college, when you're studying, you are learning on your own, but, a lot of things are also taught by your professors, right? Those kind of people are available in the workplace in the form of bosses, but many of the bosses are teaching less, but telling more on, getting things done because they are under pressure. So if you don't develop the self-learning, habit now, documentation now, and, text-based understanding, you'll be in trouble if, if you are the visual person, people person that you need to interact with people in person to get going. So remote working and telecommuting rather, have become the way of life. So work from home is here to stay for all of you who are just passing out. My invitation is, develop the habit of working in a very minimalistic atmosphere and developing that self-discipline, because you don't have the time to go and personally, wave that magic around people whom you have never met, right? So it's going to be a tough new world you're entering next 2 years. So get comfortable with, self-learning, self-discipline, and most importantly, text-based, communication for you to get into the new world of remote working. This is something that I saw during the lockdown, National Geographic. I'm sure some of you have seen Manish Paul. Like he says, "Suniye, lockdown par aap log hain, dimag nahi," right? Brain is a muscle, so you need to keep using it to, for your best of the ability to develop, right? So, like I have done for the first month or so, don't binge watch and waste your time. And the key thing that I want to leave you with, at this point of time, I want to come there. But one thing I want to ask you before that is, how confident are you that you will get a job immediately after your course? Can we run this poll? Ajay? Are you very confident? Are you not sure? When I passed out, I wasn't very sure. You don't need a job, that'll be cool. Or you'll be studying further.
So here are the results of the poll. how confident are you that you will get a job immediately after your course? 38% of them say that they are very confident. 56% of them are still saying that they are not sure. 4% of them say that they don't need a job, and 8% of them prefer to further their education.
Thank you all for participating. And for the 56%, I was there too many years ago. And I want to tell you that there are a lot of opportunities. It's just that we need to get through the friction I talked about, about the skills matching, and most importantly, the location. 50% of you said that you don't want to go to another place. I'm sure you'll change your opinion if you don't get a job. And, at least I'm hoping that I have at least nudged you towards that. So for the not sure guys, think about the location part, because 50% of you said you don't want to work outside the hometown, right? So I want to ask you this. What do you think would be your claim to fame? Meaning, all of you are aspirational in something. You want to become something, right? You want to be a successful entrepreneur. You want to work for big brands. Many of you said your first job has to be in MNC. I want to be in a power. I want to be CEOs, HR, or if people are studying HR, CFOs if you're studying finance, chief marketing officer if you're studying marketing. So, what is your claim to fame? What do you think if you get there, you feel that, okay, here I am? Because many of us, in our own professional life, talk about, oh, this guy. I'm sure some of them came and spoke to you also this week. Like, I'm here too. I work for GE. He's a Citibank guy. You would have seen on LinkedIn, ex-Googler, ex-Flipkart, people write like that, So that has become a kind of an identity of people, the companies that they work for, or something that you achieved. This is what you did. You work for X company, but as a person, you achieved Y, right? So all of us, I think, in our career life cycle will eventually be labeled with this claim to fame. And unfortunately or fortunately, it will be about the introduction that you got. Kamal was MD of Kelly Services. That's not who I am. That's the job I did, but that is how it gets attached to you. So your first 5 years, I think it's important for you to look at, if I didn't like my first job, will I take a little more time to choose my second job and stay there and figure out that what am I good at? So your claim to fame will come into play. Let's say 20 years of your career, and I'm even talking about 40 years you might retire. You need to get to your claim to fame fast, which could be the role that you are doing, the company that you work for. There's no harm, honestly. So, or wanting to be an entrepreneur, what is that? That can decide how you want to sort of play your game, right? So, one more aspect related to this I want to tell you is what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. When they come together, that is the best space to be. And for that to happen, it takes time. And it could take a long time for many of us. And many times we don't know till somebody tells us, right? So how do we choose our jobs? We choose our jobs based on opportunities. That's why I asked, I want to be a CEO, CFO, because this, by being an MBA finance, maybe I'll get there, right? So that's how you choose a pathways, because something is already in sight for us that I want to be there. So we choose a pathway based on the opportunities and not based on the strengths and our likings. And that's where after 5-6 years or even more, many of us are struggling with our jobs. We hate our jobs. We hate our companies because the choice we made was based on the opportunity, the money, the power, the roles, right? So we didn't choose it based on the strengths. Somebody told us I'm good in sales, but the opportunity was in HR. It seemed like a cool job. I can sit at home. I don't need to travel. It is more suitable to who I am. We tell all these stories and not look at our strengths. So it's important to have a higher level of self-awareness, talk to people, and then choose the job based on what we're good at and what we like doing versus where the opportunities are. Yeah, it's good to be aspirational to get there, but don't choose purely based on opportunities. That's little gyan from my side. So some takeaways I want to give you with this, most importantly, build a network. Can you meet or speak to one person every week? Because whom do you know matters. Can you know about one company a day? That means it, it sort of opens your horizons in the industry that you are choosing, in the role that you want to be. So that's how you build your horizons, and that's how people know that you have somebody who's application, your knowledge. That's how you get chosen, and you whether you get a job or not, it is just to build your horizons, to train your memory muscle on things related to knowledge. Building the network is the most important thing. First 10 years of your life, if you constantly meeting one new person a week, knowing about one company a day, I can tell you the world will come to you after that. That's for me the building a network. The skills you have. You may have a qualification, you might be an MBA or let's say BE as it might be. But if you do not have depth, if you don't know how to apply to them, whatever knowledge you have, whatever pedigree you have, somebody who has a better application capability will do better than you in the organization that you work for, in the field that you are in. Like I said, it's a crowded space, right? So the depth matters. Third most important aspect, I said this before, is about technology savviness. Don't say, I don't get it, I'm technologically challenged kind of thing. But most of you youngsters are good at that. I know, you're born to the technology world, but still, you're choosing marketing, finance, or HR. All of them are in the cutting edge of technology. So get to the depth of technology. Don't ever say I'm not a technology person. Keep indulging in pieces that you don't know, right? Many of you said this, so I'm just repeating what you just said in a while, that money is not important, I guess. So don't pick the first job for money and face the misery that comes with that. Money shall come. If you build your network, if you have your skills, opportunities will come chasing you. So pick your first job in a way that, it is not based on money. I know 29% of you have to pay back your loans, but you can still pay back your loans. I can assure you that. So this we covered. So what's your claim to win? 10 years from now, how many jobs would you have changed to get there? That's another question, right? So ask that. I have no answer for you. This is my last slide for all of you. I always believe that, when men went to moon and only few of them got selected there, I'm sure a lot of them getting prepared, a lot of them getting trained, but just a couple of them went up, right? Were they the luckiest ones? Maybe. But I always believe that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. That's my favorite quote. And I want all of you to believe that your preparation is the key. And how much ever efforts you put, eventually luck will happen to you because you're prepared all the time. So thank you very much. You can get to the questions in the if we are there.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful and informative session. At this point, I would like to inform the participants that on completion of the session, you would be receiving an assessment form in the email. So you would be required to fill and submit the assessment form to get the e-certificate. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Pranav. This is just a reinstatement of what our student coordinator, Pranav, has just said. There were certain audio problems here, so I'm just repeating some of his statements. Once the session is over, this is an information for all the participants. Once the session is completed, we would be sending out an assessment form to the participants. So the participants are requested to fill and submit the assessment form. Once we receive the assessment form, you will be receiving your e-certificates. Okay. So thank you, sir, for your highly interactive and useful session. I'm sure all the suggestions, the advices, and the information that you have provided to the participants is going to be extremely helpful for them in obtaining a job and in launching their career and sustaining their career as well. There are a few questions which some of the participants have posted to us. So this is the first question what we have. Bhavani Das and Harika have asked something in common over here. So they have asked which kind of job to take up and how to evaluate for which I am suitable. And a similar question which another student Harika has asked is, how can you be aware of your personality and values? How awareness of your personality and values will help you in finding a suitable job?
Okay. I would always believe that when you choose what's good for you as a job, you look for the people whom you meet. Yeah, there'll be big brands, they are known for certain things. They're not become a big brand just like that. But I believe that many of these brands have also built by great people in the past. So there have been legacies. So some of them could be just enjoying that legacy. So I would always urge today's first-time job seekers to look for the people they met. And when you meet people and you ask them questions and you have a deeper interaction, I believe that you'll understand how they think, how they operate, what their value systems are. Does that match with who I am? So I think that is the best place to sort of evaluate. Though you might get half an hour, 45 minutes to sort of judge that, but I think all of us have powerful instincts. I believe in the world of our own instinct to make that call. So I would urge that to look at people and see that, is this the person who connects with me? Is this the person who will give me time? Is it the person whom I think I'll be inspired by? That is what would be the basis to choose the job. So about your own value systems and what am I good at? I think is something that as you're studying, you'll be able to get feedback from where you're studying right now. I'm sure there are also a lot of online assessment tools like Strength Finder. I would recommend people to use that. Maybe it costs about $1,000, an online test. It highlights, amplifies your test. And I'm a great believer of, strength-based team building. So you work on people's strengths and not beat them around what they don't have, because after a point in life, it's very difficult to develop new skills and new strengths, So some of the strengths are more amplified. So I believe there are many assessment tools out there, which gives you kind of a reflection. I'm not saying that's silver bullet, because over a period of time, we can learn new things, but it gives you a kind of a personality factor to tell you this is who you are. I hope I answered that.
There's a second question here from a participant called Shweta Mukherjee. With all the heavy competition around, there is always a phase where half the mass gets opportunities early, whereas the other half of the people, they don't. So for this other half of the people who do not get opportunities early, how do they turn on that tough phase into something productive and overcome the mental pressure at the time where they're not able to get a job?
Sure. Like I said, India is a land of, I would still call it a lot of good white collar opportunities, for the reason that, like I said, there are 1,300 globally now centers, which are large MNCs. You have 10,000 startups. You have very large Indian enterprises which employ, people to the tune of 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 3 lakhs, kind of numbers. So if you can't find something immediately, find for those little opening where you can play the game. Like I said, take an internship. If I'm even 3 months, I don't mind actually working for free, because you must be really bad, and COVID must have really hit hard for not get anything beyond that. So COVID has hit us bad, but it has not sort of shut the world completely, right? So don't waste the time. Just in case you believe that you not got the entry in the first time, be at it. Keep doing things like I said, internship, volunteering. Be in a place where you can learn something, a new skill. Nobody's going to judge you because you didn't get a job in the first 3 months after you passed out. They would like to know, what did you do when you didn't have a job? That is what we are all curious about, because one thing COVID has taught us is anybody can lose their job. Anybody can be jobless. So the world has changed on its head. Unlike in the past where, if you didn't get anything in time, people thought something must be wrong with this guy. That's no longer the world.
There is another similar question, sir. It's almost similar to what the previous one. This is asked by a participant by the name Dinkan. So they say that when companies first shortlist employees, they're shortlisting the candidates for their jobs, they normally go by the marks that they have obtained in the 10th, 12th, or their degree or their PG. So 60% appears to be the cutoff for most of the companies. So there are many students who, although they don't get that 60%, they are extremely skilled. So for such people, how do they prove themselves in order to get their, in order to kickstart their career? How do they prove themselves in spite of their low marks, who are extremely skilled?
Yeah, it's a harsh reality today because, see, large enterprises have decided that they will filter people based on certain criteria, right? So I asked this to a very large CEO. In fact, he was the CEO of HCL once upon a time. So he told me this, that look, the way we look at it is, if we have asked 60% cutoff in graduation, it's because we want to see your job was to be in this college and to study few things. What is your achievement orientation towards that? Though it does not necessarily turn into learning, we wanted to hire people who have a higher, better achievement orientation. And the only way to filter this out was marks. Many of the organizations are changing the dimension, but today the easiest filter is to apply marks. But if that is the case, then you lost out. My invitation to you is, look at the networks you have. This is the world of networks. The known people, whether you are, a lot of traffic in my road today, whether you are in a startup, trying to raise funds, or as a fresher looking to get a new job, you need to find somebody who knows you, who can recommend you. I'm sure, like I said, if you look around you, your own ecosystem of relatives, friends, neighbors, you'll find somebody who's working in a large company. It's just that we don't look hard enough for them, and ask for that small opportunity of an internship or a volunteering, which will allow you to get there eventually. My simple invitation is, don't get disheartened that you got rejected because of marks, because there are certain kind of companies which that is their filtering criteria, because they also recruit in hundreds and thousands. So they have found out that formula for themselves. So my invitation is, look for your network where somebody says, I know, XYZ, please give me an opportunity. That is how you can take, possibly, if not the front door, the back door, if I have to use that word. Go through the networks.
Here is another interesting question, sir. During this time of the COVID-19 pandemic, one of the participants by name Shravanti has asked, is this a good time to start your own business rather than searching for jobs elsewhere? And a connected question to this is by another student by name Anusha Jaiswal. If at all we are searching for a job, should it be a company which is an MNC, or should it be a startup? Which would be more preferable? So the first question is whether going for a job is a good option in the current scenario at all, or should we go for a startup? If at all we go for a job, should it be a small company or an MNC?
So let me start with the first question. If you can afford to, be an entrepreneur, this is the time. Next 2 years, for many of us, if you're just passed out, it's not the best time to be in the job market. It is a kind of a pause time. At least, if not for, it's definitely not an acceleration time, right? So it's going to be tough out there. And if you think you can afford to start something of your own, be an entrepreneur, I would say go for it. That's my straightforward answer, because the experiences that you will get as an entrepreneur is phenomenal. I'm experiencing it, after 45 years of my life, that, okay, what many of them have experienced possibly in their early 20s. I wish I had done this 10 years earlier. Coming back to the second question about MNC or startup, me and my co-founder actually have done a 2 to 3 minute nice video on, should you join an MNC or a startup, where we actually argue about MNC or startup. For the reason that I started my career with MNC, my co-founder believes that startup is the place to start. There are pluses and minuses. The pluses of MNC is that when you work for a large brand, there are specific processes very sophisticated technologies. The scale in which you work makes you disciplined, makes you a specialist in the thing that you do, So that is the best part of it. And you're also secure with money. People pay you on time. There are certain luxuries. Many of us get excited by large cafeterias and free food. So there are so many other excitements of working in MNC, right? That's where I started. So I've enjoyed the benefits of it my first 3 years. My next 3 years was in a startup. I'm talking from that experience that the startups teach you the most valuable lesson of multitasking. You can do multiple things, and in front of you, the organization is growing and many things are happening. And so you learn sales, you learn operation, you learn production, you learn HR, you learn finance, so many things you learn. And the most critical aspect of startups, which I think I found, was your access to people. You're not compounded by hierarchies, titles, organogram. This department is baat mat karo, like this is our team and things like that. Startup breaks all those silos. And access to people, I think in startup makes it a great place to start for anybody who's starting their career. Today, if I had to, my career happened through MNC, but if I had to tell somebody today, and you think you get a great comfort when you meet the founders and the team, join a startup.
There is one question by a student by name Apurva Tiwari, and another question which is connected to this again by a participant by name Shriya. So Apurva Tiwari is asking, in the face of the current challenges, is a career in marketing, so job openings in the field of marketing, how good are they going to be at this point of time? And another connected question to this is, there is a UG student by name Shriya. So she wants to know what specialization would be most feasible right now owing to the current pandemic. So which field is going to be blossoming in the upcoming years? Is it going to be finance, marketing, or HR? And if it is marketing, how is the marketing scenario now?
Let me start with marketing. I think it's a great time to be in marketing because let's face it, we just can't reach out to people. I'm in sales and my sales side is telling me I want to be in front of my customer because that's where I view my magic, but I can't meet them. What do I do? So this is the time marketeers, I think this is, if I'm a marketer, this is the time, to be under the sun. And that's a field, if you want to be in because you're going to be in great demand. Yeah, it could be digital marketing, which is possibly where most of the action would be. But so be it. This is the best time to be in marketing, if you ask me. Going beyond that, and if you're asking which is the best specialization, all three. If you are, I think what Ramaiah teaches you currently, whether it's your finance, money is always going to be, be managed, right? In organizations, whether it's not just money, the risk involved, the controls, all these things are done by the finance guys. And I think it's like, if you're a great finance guy, it's like being a doctor. I think till you go to your deathbed, you can practice, so in one way or the other, it will help you. So I would still put up my hand for both. And for people who are in HR, what better way to bring the best out of people when you can't meet them, when you can't talk to them, right? When you can't engage with them, right? So can you be that HR person who brings the best out of people without meeting them, without being with them, without organizing parties, without doing those antaksharis in person? Can you be that person? So I wouldn't take away anything and say this is the, if I had to use the word in vogue or sexiest, role to be in. I wouldn't think of all three could be great. Yeah, technology maybe has an edge because if you're going to work at least next 2 years remotely and the world is going to change around that too much, technology professionals will have an edge.
There's one last question, sir. This is from a student named Imdad Rahman from Alamein Institute of Management. So he's asking, apart from educational, communicational, and technical skills, are there any other skills required to thrive in the workplace?
It's my favorite part, relationship skills. I think we all suck at it, if I have to use the word, sorry for that. But, we all have our past and we live our future through the past. And that's how I think at an organizational context, when we do well, it is because of the relationship we've had with our customers, if you're in customer facing roles. with your bosses, with your team, with your peers. Why only few people are able to do it very well? Are they what we call as smooth operators, as some of us like to talk about them when they're not there? Or is it just that, they are people who can genuinely connect? My view is for tomorrow, especially if we are going to be, at least next 2 years, going to be locked up like this in different ways. I think what matters, at least I've realized, is that your success and failure have been directly proportional to your relationship quotient. Even I think it's applicable to life as well. You will be measured, over a period of time with the relationships you have. Everything else, I think, can be earned in different ways if you have great relationships. I think this is one aspect which we ignore. We are not taught well about it at home. We're allowed to be who we are. And in many organizations early in our career, they don't focus on this because they're saying, okay, you improve your communication, improve your discipline, come on time. All these things people tell us, but they don't tell us that, can we do better on relationship skills and teach them on those aspects. I would like to believe that's the skill of today, yesterday, and tomorrow.
Thank you. So basically, it's the emotional quotient and the social quotient which play a bigger role than the intelligence quotient at this point of time. Thank you so much, sir, for all the clarifications and for answering all our participants' queries. I now call upon our Dean, Dr. Bindu, to deliver the vote of thanks.
You're on mute, Dr. Bindu.
Hello. Am I
Yeah, we
audible?
can hear you.
Yes. Good afternoon. I must say it's such a pleasure, Mr. Kamal Karan, to have you. In fact, my colleague, Dr. Chakrapani Gopal, has been insisting that we must have a session from you for our students. And now, after the session, I truly understand why he was so insistent that whether we have any other session or not, we must have Mr. Kamal Karan. So thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of our webinar series. Extremely insightful and a lot of takeaways. I really wished when I heard you today that while we were students, somebody like you spoke to us. I think you've really done a kind of a settling in thought process for us. And a lot of questions that students have been posing in these last few days, I think you kind of answered through all your sessions, through your entire presentation. It was very, very insightful. And I must say that it's like the icing on the cake, that special mention on the relationship skills that you mentioned. It's very true that through these years, 2 decades of my experience, I haven't heard any HR or anybody in the organization emphasize on that particular skill aspect, while they had all the metrics to test every other skill that we had. But when you're saying this, I'm actually looking back and I do realize, yes, we live our future through our past. And relationships do help us go that extra mile. Extremely insightful. Thank you so much for coming, gracing the occasion today, being there on the webinar series, and being available for so many of the young minds that are just going to start their careers. Thank you very much. I must also say a special thanks to my entire team, the faculty moderator for the day, Mrs. Sindhuja, the technical support, Professor Ajay Krishna and Professor Prakash Nimbalkar, and of course, my colleague, Dr. Chakrapani Gopal, who's the one who connects to the industry, and the entire team that's behind it, the student council, the student coordinator team, and to all the participants who have made it possible to be there today. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us through the webinar series. And I hope to look forward to all the feedback. We are sending out the assessment form, and I'm looking forward to those answers that you're going to give us on the assessment form. So thank you very much. And once again, Mr. Kamal Karan, from the bottom of heart, from the entire group of MS Ramaiah group of institutions, our management, and the team here. Thank you so much for being a part of today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. And my heartfelt thanks to Chakrapani. We used to call him Pani in the last 30 years. I know him. And he really dragged me into this. So I said this week, I cannot do this. And last 2 weeks, he's been insisting. He's been insisting for a long time that I should come and talk. Thank you, Chakra, for bringing me here. And I really enjoyed talking to, I wish I could have seen all these guys, but all these 280 people that I've been watching, who are logged in. I hope, even if one of the things I said, and most importantly, the relationship skills, if you're able to bring into your life, be grateful. Thank you again, Chakrapani, Dr. Sunjaya, Professor Ajay, Professor Prakash Nimbalkar, and Pranav for having me here, and Dr. Bindu. All the best to all of your students, and I hope your claim to fame comes in life sooner than you expected.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. I now call upon Pranav, our student coordinator, to conclude the session.
So with this, we have come to the conclusion of 4-day webinar series. Before I conclude, I would like to thank all our participants, students, all the faculty coordinators, the speaker, and the dean of Ramaiah College of Arts, Science and Commerce to make it this huge success. Thank you and have a great day. Bye.